Do you ever feel completely certain about something, only to discover you were missing the bigger picture? That moment when you realize you weren't as in control as you thought. It's humbling, maybe even unsettling. We like to believe we're the captains of our ships, steering life with clear intentions. But what if control is just an illusion? What if the harder we grip, the more life slips through our fingers? This is where Alan Watts, the philosopher who bridged Eastern wisdom and Western minds, offers a startling perspective. He once said, "The more you try to be in control, the more you discover that life is doing you." Think about that for a second. Life is doing you, not the other way around. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, the certainty that your way is the only way. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they make the world feel safe and predictable. Remember when you realized a childhood belief wasn't quite true. Maybe you thought thunder was a giant rolling bowling balls across the sky, or that grown-ups had everything figured out. That moment of realizing you were wrong didn't just change your mind. It changed how you saw everything. Alan Watts suggests we're still doing that now, just with more sophisticated ideas. We build mental models of how life should work, and when reality doesn't match, we panic. But what if the panic itself is the problem? Here's the tension. Our minds crave certainty. We want answers, plans, and guarantees. Yet life is fluid, unpredictable, and utterly beyond our command. You can map out your career, your relationships, your goals, and then a single unexpected event shatters the illusion. Watts invites us to see this not as failure, but as freedom. When we stop pretending we're in charge, we start noticing how life unfolds on its own. Trees don't stress about growing. Rivers don't argue with their currents. They simply flow. So why do we exhaust ourselves fighting the natural rhythm of things? Think about the last time you tried to force an outcome. Maybe you rehearsed a conversation endlessly, only to have it go sideways. Or you clung to a relationship that was clearly ending, convinced you could fix it. That desperate need to control often comes from fear. The fear that without our constant effort, everything will fall apart. But Watts points out something liberating. Life doesn't need your micromanagement. The universe has been expanding for billions of years without your input. The more you relax into that truth, the more you realize mastery isn't about domination. It's about participation. This isn't about giving up or being passive. It's about shifting from rigidity to responsiveness. Imagine dancing. If you stiffen up, focused only on getting the steps right, you lose the joy of movement. But when you let go, feeling the music rather than fighting it, you become part of something larger. That's Watts's vision of true mastery. Not controlling the dance, but being the dance. You felt glimpses of this before. Those moments when you were so absorbed in an activity that time vanished. Maybe it was painting, or hiking, or laughing with friends. In those spaces, you weren't trying to control anything. You were simply alive. Watts would say that's the secret. Life isn't a problem to be solved, but an experience to be lived. The irony, the less you chase control, the more in tune you become. So, where does this leave us? If control is an illusion, what do we do? Start by noticing where you're gripping too tightly. That frustration when traffic ruins your schedule. The anxiety when people don't meet your expectations. Those are clues. Each time you soften, accepting the delay, releasing the demand, you align with life instead of wrestling it. This isn't resignation. it's wisdom. This cracks open a whole new way of seeing life. At first, everything seems simple. We think if we just follow the right steps, stick to the plan, and keep everything under control, life will unfold exactly as we want. This is where most of us start, believing that mastery comes from rigid rules and predictable outcomes. We see the world in black and white, right and wrong, success and failure. It feels safe this way, like we're holding the reins. But this simplicity is just the beginning, the surface layer of something much deeper. Then comes the confusing middle. This is when life throws us curveballs, and our neat little systems start to crumble. Maybe we lose a job we thought was secure, or a relationship we counted on shifts unexpectedly. Suddenly, the control we thought we had feels like an illusion. This is where things get messy. Alan Watts called this the trap of the mind, the way we cling to certainty, even when life is inherently uncertain. We resist the discomfort, fighting to force things back into order. You might be someone who resists change at first, digging in your heels when things don't go as planned. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions, like we're losing our footing. But this middle phase isn't a mistake, it's necessary. Watts often spoke about challenges as the very thing that wake us up. They shake us out of our automatic ways of thinking, forcing us to question what we thought we knew. It's like trying to swim against a current. The harder we fight, the more exhausted we become. Eventually, we start to wonder if there's another way. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, noticing old habits that don't serve you anymore. We start seeing how knee-jerk reactions, like snapping in frustration or clinging to outdated plans, only create more struggle. Watts contrasted this with thoughtful responses, where we step back, observe, and move with the flow of life rather than against it. And then, slowly, comes the new clarity. It doesn't arrive with a bang, but with a quiet shift in perspective. We begin to see that control wasn't about gripping tighter, but about loosening our hold. Life isn't a puzzle to solve, but a dance to join. This doesn't mean we become passive. It means we engage with more wisdom, less force. We start to trust the process, even when we can't see the outcome. Most of us feel a mix of relief and curiosity at this stage, like we've been carrying a heavy weight without realizing it. The tough middle phase is where the real growth happens, even though it's uncomfortable. Watts described it like clouds covering the sun. The sun is always there, even when we can't see it. Our challenges don't block our path. They are the path. You might notice small changes now, like feeling less rattled when plans change, or finding humor in things that used to frustrate you. We start to see that mastery isn't about controlling every detail, but about responding with flexibility and awareness. Through this discomfort, we begin to see the cracks in the stories we've told ourselves, the ones that insist we're not enough, that we should be further along by now, or that happiness is something to be earned rather than embraced. It's in these moments of unease that the old frameworks start to crumble, and suddenly there's space for something new. At first, it might feel like standing on unsteady ground, but that's only because we're so used to the familiar ache of the paths we've always walked. The journey to new understanding isn't about flipping a switch or arriving at some grand revelation. It's quieter than that. It's the slow realization that the rules we've been following were never really rules at all, just suggestions handed down by people who were just as unsure as we are. You'll likely find daily decisions coming easier, not because the world has changed, but because you're no longer weighing them against an invisible standard. The pressure to get it right starts to lift, and in its place is something far more forgiving: the freedom to simply be. Many notice old frustrations don't bother them as much. The coworker who always interrupts, the traffic that never seems to clear, the small disappointments that used to linger, they lose their grip. It's not that these things vanish, but the weight they carry does. The shift is subtle, like the way sunlight feels different in October than it does in July. You can't pinpoint the exact moment it changed, but you know it has. This is where the Barnum effect sneaks in, those vague universal truths that feel deeply personal. You're harder on yourself than you need to be. You crave meaningful connections, but sometimes fear vulnerability. Of course, these resonate. They're human experiences, not unique revelations. But there's a gift in that too. Recognizing how much we share can soften the edges of our self-judgment. If everyone feels this way sometimes, then maybe we're not doing it wrong after all. Together we discover that growth isn't about becoming someone entirely new. It's about uncovering what was already there, the parts of us we've tucked away because they didn't fit the mold. The irony is that the mold was never real. It was just a story, and stories can be rewritten. Alan Watts once described freedom like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit. You didn't realize how much they pinched until you slipped them off and felt the ground beneath your bare feet. That's what this feels like. The relief of no longer forcing yourself into shapes that were never meant to hold you. The joy of realizing you were never broken, just cramped. And so, we keep going, not because we figured it all out, but because the journey itself has become lighter. The questions that once felt heavy now spark curiosity. The uncertainties that used to keep us up at night now feel like open doors. We're not chasing some distant finish line. We're learning to walk in a way that feels true. And that, more than anything, is worth celebrating.